We're back here on HQ Spotlight, where Niners quarterback Brock Purdy, the final pick of the 2022 NFL Draft, is in line to make $5.3 million in base salary this upcoming season, which is the final year of his rookie contract. As he enters the last year of this deal, he has a big payday. There have been talks that things are moving in a positive direction for Purdy, but just how well, right? And what should that payday actually look like? And is it all riding on a make it or break it season in 2025? Let's go ahead and find out as we welcome Danny Kanell to HQ Spotlight. Danny, great to see you. Let's start with Purdy here. I don't believe it's a matter of if he gets paid, but more so when and how much. Do you think after the reload that the Niners have had that this is a make it or break it season for Purdy to prove he's more than just a game manager?
I do, Jordan, but I think he is, and I think he's already proven he has, as evidenced by his Super Bowl appearance a couple years ago, and I know they lost the game, but that season was phenomenal. And even last year, which was a down year, he was still top 10 in passing yards with 3,800 yards, and that was without Christian McCaffrey and a lot of guys getting injured. Brandon Ayuk getting injured. A lot of those pieces were missing, so he did have to carry a lot of the workload. And I know the season didn't unfold the way that San Francisco 49ers fans wanted it to, but guess what? Christian McCaffrey will be back. George Kittle is secured. Brandon Ayuk will be back healthy. And Juwan Jennings emerged as a pretty viable number 2 option without Deebo Samuel. So I think Brock Purdy gets such a hard time because he was Mr. Irrelevant, because he was a 7th rounder. It's like he has to prove it doubly as much as anybody else to overcome that label of not a first rounder. If he was a first rounder, I think we wouldn't even be having this conversation. He would have already inked that big deal. But I think he'll make this season for the 49ers. I think they're back in the playoffs, and Brock Purdy continues to show people that he's more than just a game manager.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what that number will be. Let's get from one quarterback who's looking to get paid to one who just got paid in the Seahawks, Sam Darnold. How big of a year is it for him in Seattle? And talk about the pressure there is to repeat what he was able to do last season.
It would have been hard, Jordan, for him to repeat that season if he stayed in Minnesota with the same, offensive mind behind him and Kevin O'Connell with the same weapons he had at wide receiver. But I thought it was very indicative of Sam Darnold that the Vikings chose to move on, and they did not want to pay him the big bucks. So in steps Seattle, and they're like, hey, we'll take a swing at it. I don't know if they're going to get the same production as they got from Geno Smith. And without DK Metcalf and a 31-year-old Cooper Kupp who hasn't played every game in over 3 seasons, a Marquez Valdes-Scantling on the outside, a Jackson Smith-Njigba who's a good, talented young wide receiver, I think he's getting a downgrade at wide receiver of who he's throwing to on the outside. They don't have the best run game out there. So I have concerns for Sam Darnold. In a make-or-break season, I would tend to think this could be a little bit of a setback year for somebody who's had a very much a bumpy ride throughout his NFL career. I am very cautious that Sam Darnold backs up last season that was very much in the MVP talks and the MVP conversation. I think the fact that Minnesota was willing to move on from him spoke volumes, and I would say buyer beware for the Seahawks, but we'll see when the season starts off.
Yeah, and I don't think you're alone in that. Let's now head down south to Miami and talk about their quarterback situation. The Dolphins picked up quarterback Quinn Ewers, and the NFL draft. Tua's concussion history is well documented. Is time ticking for Tua in Miami?
Yes, absolutely. And as a franchise quarterback, especially now that he did get the big deal and he's paid as a, top quarterback in the league, those expectations ramp up. Unfortunately, I think the playoff win drought continues. It's been 24 years since the Dolphins saw a victory in the playoffs. They're 0-5 since 2000. And unfortunately, I think some of that falls on Tua, but not all of it. I'm concerned about Mike McDaniel and the lack of response from the team to his style of coaching. He comes in there and he's the cool coach that gives you a lot of quips and great lines for the media, but I don't think this team is very mentally tough, as evidenced by when they went to Kansas City and they were all freezing cold and looked like they had, were all just wanting to get back on the plane and come home. When they face adversity, same issue. They've made some changes, and they need to get back to physicality. What concerns me for Tua and the Dolphins is look at what some of the other young quarterbacks were given. Like, I wish the Dolphins would have made a move like the Eagles going to get a Saquon Barkley to give to Jalen Hurts. I like a Derrick Henry to give to the Baltimore Ravens. I mentioned Brock Purdy. We just talked about him. He's got a Christian McCaffrey. I wish they would put more into the run game as a physical presence so that you don't have to rely on Tua to throw the ball so much and to throw for over 4,000 yards and to subject himself to the types of hit. You mentioned it. The injury history is real. So I have concerns about that. I have concerns about the Dolphins and how this team makeup is going to be with team chemistry. We saw Tyreek Hill gave his 5 top quarterbacks. Tua was not one of them. People were upset saying Tyreek Hill was a bad teammate. I'm like, well, he can't lie. He can't go out there and make the case that isn't accurate. So I'm a little bit concerned about the Miami Dolphins heading into this season.
I'm glad you brought up all the fun and games in the post-game press conferences, because I think that's no more in Miami as time is ticking for both, I think, Tua and head coach Mike McDaniel. We'll see what happens next season. Let's get to a new quarterback in New York as the Jets signed Justin Fields to a 2-year, $40 million contract. How much is riding on this season for Fields to prove, Danny, that he can be a long-term quarterback?
So a lot. And here's the thing, like make or break, I was like, put my hands up. Like, I don't know. Yeah. I sent our producer the who knows to like emoji. I was like, I don't know. I think he'll show enough this season to make it look like a smart signing. Like it was a reasonable contract that they handed to Justin Fields. 2 years, $40 million. That's pretty cheap to essentially get a free look at a 26-year-old quarterback who has shown flashes, right? Even when he was in Pittsburgh, it was kind of, you'd see bright spots and be like, ooh, I wish he could take it to that next level. Well, now he has an opportunity to do that with low expectations in year one, some young talent around him. He gets to rejoin with his teammate Garrett Wilson. They drafted Mason Taylor as a nice tight end weapon. They bring in Armand Mimbu to shore up the offensive line, and you get a new coaching staff. We were just talking about Tua wanting to bring some physicality. Aaron Glenn and Tanner Ingstad saying they're going to bring a physicality in a run game to support Justin Fields, and that includes utilizing him as a runner. But I think that physicality will allow them to have more of a personality or a presence, or that something like they had in Detroit with Dan Campbell that Aaron Glenn is going to bring there. Unfortunately, it's revolved around quarterback play so much because they had to throw the football. They didn't have that run game. I think they get back to some of the basics. They give Justin Fields the physicality that he needs to flourish both in the run game and the pass game. So I don't know if he makes it this season like, oh, yeah, it was a great signing, but I definitely think he shows enough to carry it another year.
I hope so, for the sake of Jets fans, because I think they're sick of having low expectations that you alluded to start the season. Lastly here, the Colts, they have an interesting situation on their hands with Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. Richardson, as we know, enters his 3rd season after a promising but injury-ridden start to his career. Jones, the former first-round pick, hoping to really revitalize his career after being released by the New York Giants. Is it safe to say it's a major make-it-or-break-it year for both of these guys?
Yes, for everybody, for Shane Steichen, for the Colts front office, for these quarterbacks. I must say, Jordan, this is I got to look, and if I ranked quarterback rooms, this might be my least favorite. Like last year it was the Raiders. Everybody's like, what a disaster that was. Now, granted, you have 2 first-round picks in there between Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, but Daniel Jones, we've seen him have multiple opportunities and come up short. We've seen him with a Saquon Barkley and come up short. Anthony Richardson did have a Jonathan Taylor last year who rushed for 1,400 yards. I worry about Anthony Richardson as the future because the same concerns that I had him in at the University of Florida are cropping up. I was very concerned about his accuracy through 2 seasons. He's still right around 50% completion percentage. He's got 11 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. The decision-making has become an issue. So I am very concerned about Anthony Richardson, and throw in the mix that he's been injured, something that he was at Florida too. I think Daniel Jones will get to play this season, and unfortunately, I probably think Riley Leonard gets rolled out there at some point too, the draft pick that they selected out of Notre Dame. I just look at this quarterback room, and I think it tends to show that this is going to be a problem where the Colts next year are probably drafting somebody once again in the top 5, top 10, or making a major signing to try to find their franchise quarterback, because I don't think it exists in that quarterback room.
Big yikes there. Arch Manning, though? Question mark?
Possibly.
Right.
There you go. Coming back
juicy.
To where his uncle played.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Hot seat is scorching hot for a lot of folks there in Indy. Danny Kanell, always great to see you. Thanks for joining us here on HQ Spotlight.